Awesome. Uh, a very good evening to everybody who has joined this Air Meet. Thank you so much for joining in. So we have a kick-ass session today. Would like to quickly introduce our speakers of the session. We have with us Suhas. Suhas is the founder of the Product Folks, and Suhas is currently a business analyst at PepsiCo. It's been 2 years since the Product Folks has been started, and we would love to know all the tricks and tricks in the trade of running a community from you. Thank you so much for joining, Suhas. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks so much, Alan, for having me.
Awesome, awesome. We also have Nanda here. Hi, Nanda. Good evening. So
Hey, Aaron.
yeah, so Nanda is a founding member of the Growth Folks, which is a sister community to the Product Folks. And Nanda is currently at Upgrade and would love to hear Nanda's thoughts on what exactly community management is and how is it helping companies and the aspirants. Thank you so much for joining in, Nanda. And also we have with us our moderator of the day, Santosh. Hi, Santosh. Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome all. And welcome, Swaz, and thank you, Nanda and Swaz, for your time out here. I guess this is going to be a knowledge gaining session for me as well. I was looking forward to, even though I've met Swaz numerous times, so that conversation is different. And right now, what we are having is much more a fun filled, but still knowledge sharing one. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you, Alan, for setting this up. I'm looking forward to some amazing sessions. I already met a couple of them out there and they
Yeah.
already are ready with the questions
Yeah.
to shoot to Suhas and Nanda, which I'm looking
Yes.
to moderate. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Dear. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Santosh. So before we could kickstart the fireside chat or the panel, I would quickly like to give a shout out to the product folks and growth folks. So the product folks is a volunteer-driven community, and at product folks, they continue to work hard and build a community for aspirants and for early stage PMs. So just to give some numbers, the product folks has about 9+ city chapters, more than 100 events in the past days, 100K plus organic reach, and more than 15K people are in the community. And that's about the product folks. And about the growth folks, growth folks is the India's largest community of growth enthusiasts. It's a fast-growing community for marketers, growth hackers, entrepreneurs, and enthusiasts. And similarly to the product folks, there are about 8 city chapters, more than 70 offline events. They have had more than 3,500 plus meetups across India, and both these communities are growing parallelly in India, and they both these communities have great goals. So we're super excited to have the founding members of both these communities here. Also, a quick note about AirMeet. So, AirMeet is a tool which right now, and it's a tool for online conferences, summits, meetups, webinars. Uh, uh, so, AirMeet is mainly focused on giving you the experience which you get in an offline event, right? So, as you entered, you were able to see a bunch of tables. That was to simulate the experience which you get if you go to a hotel or an offline hall. So that's about AirMeet. And myself, I'm Alan. I am currently working at AirMeet as a product evangelist, and I'm super happy to have organize this event. Handing off to Santosh. Super excited. All the best, guys. Cheers.
Sure. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you so much. So, as I think Suhas has already posted out there, it's a small group, let's keep it informal as much as possible. And we do things, informally a lot, when we are building community. So there's no formalities at all, when we actually go from scratch and build a community, like how thousands of them, it has been done. So that will be much more interactive today. You know what, this, in this entire question list or, how do we start and all those things, these discussions were happening few minutes before. It's not that, we have been doing this for, so many years. And then in that case, we don't plan so much when we're talking about community. It's just natural, just comes out in that way. So, we had the first question, should we need to talk about, defining what is a community? And then, now I don't think so. We have to do that one because, being in this era and what the pandemic has actually made us all learn. I think everyone knows what is a community, and by default, from birth, I think we are part of one or the other community. It's just that we don't recognize it, right? I think what I would sum it up as community is nothing but it brings people, it brings a group of people together with a common purpose or an interest or a goal. So in that way, we are here. Glad to start it off, and then I would maybe like to start off by um, I myself, I don't know much about the start of the product folks or growth folks. So I want to start from there. That journey, that story, it should be inspiring. So I would let Suhas want to start off. How did the journey start? Why did even it start? What made you build such a community? And I think that is something which we are looking forward to. Suhas.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much, Santosh, and thanks, Alan, for that introduction. One thing I realized is probably the numbers on the website need to be updated. We're growing much faster than that, so maybe for the next one. But yeah, thanks so much for having us. And like I mentioned on the chat, I think let's keep it super informal, guys. We want to keep this more tactical. So if you guys have any questions, happy to share the experience. We'll start off with something that Santosh has planned. I see a lot of familiar faces. If you guys have any specific questions around, I think we've been helping a couple of 0 to 1 brand communities and as well as a couple of volunteer driven communities, especially if you're building something in the professional space. Happy to take specific questions that other people can also learn from, and maybe we could share something that we have learned along the way while building these communities. I think two communities that we're talking about today, but Nanda and me have been involved in a bunch of them that didn't make it or haven't lasted this long enough. So lots of learnings there as well. To start off with, the story behind Growth Folks and the Product Folks is we both started building a community called Growth Folks. It was started by Ayush in 2017. We joined in 18, a year later. Where it was kind of dormant. They already had a bunch of members, but it wasn't as active. And that was a space I think I was entering product and growth on my professional role as well. Nanda was already actively building other communities, so I think that's where we all saw fit. Three of us started building communities, built Growth Folks. I'll let Nanda share a little more about Growth Folks, but we built that for a couple of months, then moved on to start the Product Folks, and yep, the journey for Product Folks is something that I can go in deeper. But Nanda, would you just want to jump in and share a little more about Growth Folks?
Sure, sure. Thanks, Suhas. Like Suhas rightly pointed, I think we were pretty much involved in a lot of other communities also, other than product folks and growth folks. But a lot of it did turn out to be the way where growth folks and product folks is right now. So sticking to how Suhas pointed out on where we met and how we kickstarted this. So I was previously working at Upgrad, building and scaling communities, and that's how I left Upgrad and then I joined a full-time work. It was not nothing to do with community. So that's how I started attending and being a part of a lot of other communities because communities was always there with me even during weekdays, weekends, even after I left my previous job. So that's how when I started attending the events, I met Suhas and a couple of others uh, at a multiple instances. So that's where we brainstormed on the need for having communities in the product growth and different other verticals because we were pretty much involved in building these communities. So we thought, why don't we start this up and continue to grow eventually? So that's where the whole idea of we coming to work together for the growth folks started. And since we started with the growth folks, I think Suhas was also involved a lot to a large extent in the product space. And even I had an exposure to the product communities because of my previous stint at Upgrade. So that's how we also felt an alignment of the need for having a product community. So that's where I was, and even Suhas was part of both the communities to large extent from the beginning. And that's how later Suhas and me started working on the product folks separately, and then we started growing that together. So that's a small journey. But when it comes to growth folks, I think the purpose of probably growth folks is to probably growth is, I would say, kind of new term. Probably it was established already in the other countries, but growth was a new term in India to some extent, right? And growth is kind of term, it's not even well defined, if I have to say. and it is an intersection between like product marketing, customer success, and a lot of other specializations also. So that's where our idea and the if we look at the trend right now, the need for growth marketeers and the growth PMs and growth in general have been growing. So that's where we spotted that okay, this is something that's continue to grow, and that's how we really wanted to make a dent in the growth space. So that's how we came together and started this. After that, yeah, we did a lot of events across different cities, and also we did India's largest product growth hackathon, where I think even uh, it's an alignment of how product and growth can come together and drive success, right? So we did different initiatives that and continue to experiment a lot and eventually grow along the way. Even we've learned a lot on this journey. But I think for now I'm going to hold right here and let Suhas to share a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And Nanda, in case like Ayush and Paras also join, do bring them on stage. I think would love to hear from them. To give you a little more background about product folks, like Nanda shared, back when we started it, there were other communities. I think this is something we wanted to highlight. iSpirit has done a phenomenal job. I think Product Nation iSpirit, but they're much larger. We know about NASCOM, who hosts their annual product conclave, but they were much larger. So there are very few volunteer-driven communities. But when you compare this to the West, right, probably say the European market or the Valley, there are a lot more volunteer-driven communities doing this. So this is something that we felt staying in Bangalore, which is probably the Silicon Valley of India. This is one thing that we found where there was a gap, and that's where our first event started. We put out a tweet on. We didn't have a handle back then. It was probably a couple of followers that we had on our personal accounts put out a tweet saying that, hey, this is something that we're interested. Would you guys want to join in? And we were lucky enough that a couple of them tagged. Our first event was on the lines of what is the day in the life of product manager look like, right? We were also interested to understand more. So we were lucky we got two speakers who were at the director level position, and about 50, 60 people joined in. So that gave us some amount of validation that, hey, okay, I mean, there are other people also interested. And yeah, we just started there. So that was our first event. And there wasn't too much traction back then. I think we got lucky given that that tweet just picked up. We got some interesting responses there, and WeWork was kind enough to give us a space. Right, many of them approach us. How do you approach? How do you get WeWork, or how do you get these spaces? Right, we were starting off volunteer driven, no resources back then. We just reached out, and I mean, this is from grassroots for us as well. So there wasn't any particular story behind that. That is as it is. We're telling it to you. There wasn't like a great plan behind this. We didn't do too much. But I think along the way, a lot more things to grow. So that's the first thing. To be honest, I think that's where we 9 cities, 7 in India, 2 outside, where we're doing monthly offline events. This is pre-pandemic. Um, our first few events were definitely for early stage product managers looking for people looking to break into product. Soon we scaled it up to, we noticed that okay, senior PMs weren't coming in the room. And Santosh, let me know if you want to cut this down. I'm going a little more in depth here, but in case you want me to just highlight, I thought maybe it'll be interesting for people to understand that it's a journey that doesn't scale that easily initially. Right? Today you might think if you host an event, it's easy to get people, but everything that we did initially was doing things that don't scale, right? We reached out to people over LinkedIn, like first few events. First event, yes, we did get lucky, but we can't repeat that, right? So over time, I think we've never got less than 60, 70 people in an offline event also, but Nanda definitely put in a lot of effort. I mean, we'll take you through those tactics as well. But giving you a little more about the journey, we started offline events, first few were for early stage folks. Notice that senior PMs weren't coming in the room, right? So for them, we started another series called Pizza with PMs, where we tied up with companies. They'd sponsor the pizzas, and we'd reach out to senior PMs in the community, tell them that, hey, would you guys want to, network with other people, understand how practices work across different firms, and I think that is something that really helped us. Moved on from there, we launched a learning resources library called Learn PM with Me, which is for most of these early stage folks to come in the community, but it didn't really have a path out there. And we thought instead of them spending on expensive boot camps and then coming to us asking for leads or opportunities to properly interview, we thought maybe it would be great to create an introduction or a primer. So that's where Learn PM with me came to life. We noticed there were easily 5,000, 6,000 visits organically a month on that. But people were still not able to break in. So that's where we launched Insurjo.club, an early stage APM program. APM programs are super popular abroad, but very few companies in India were doing it, and none as a third party volunteer driven organization. There's a company called Toronto APM in Canada who was doing this, and we took a huge inspiration from them. While we were starting off, they were very supportive in this. Um, and that's how I think Insurjo came to life. But today, I think we are working on version 2 of it that is a little more scalable, because we see that there is still a gap between demand and supply. And hopefully, this March, we should be able to show you guys version 2. This was a journey till I think early this year, but then pandemic hit, and we transitioned from a pure offline to a pure online play. One learning here was we probably should have launched our online vertical as we were scaling the offline. And that is something that we missed out on. But we did have a lot of WhatsApp groups that we did even with the offline. So we didn't have a common Slack channel or common Discord, a common place where everyone could interact. That's something we didn't focus on early on, given that there were tons of Slack channels already, right? So we were focusing on the harder part. How do we scale this across multiple cities? And a huge inspiration for this is MTP and Startup Grind, right? They've done it across multiple cities globally. So that was one part that we were looking for. But pandemic hit, that suddenly stopped. I think the teams that we had across cities were super awesome, super enthusiastic. Came together and transitioned to similar, like for example, the Chennai chapter. Alan's a part of it, who was leading the Chennai chapter. They transitioned into a more SaaS focused product building vertical, as well as founder story. That is, we host early stage founders there. So each of these communities then transitioned. For Mumbai chapter, they moved into breaking into PM series, which is interviewing early stage product managers to get tactical advice on how to transition. Couple of communities, offline communities, came together to start the product conversation series, where we'd host people outside of India. Shreyas from Stripe, Lenny from Airbnb, etc. And these really kicked off. It took some time for the transition, but just trying to explain a little more about our journey. If you guys are also in that same journey, even we had that, would love to hear from you guys also how that transition has been. But I'd say it's a boon for us, given that now we realize that organizing a lot of these offline events weren't easy at all. We did it; it was fun, but if given a chance, and it definitely added to our moat, because no one else was actually scaling offline events in the product space as a volunteer-driven organization. Head Start it was a startup focused community doing it really well. So we were getting senior members from there. We were talking with them on how they were doing it, and that was one learning for us. But the transition has been awesome, right? So these are the events vertical that transition. Insurjo and Learn PM with me were parallelly coming up. So we were trying to build something which is a little more outcome driven for the entire community, and our focus has always been listening closer to the community and building stuff that is relevant for them. Things a little easier, but we also already had an audience base using it. So that is where we think a community base. So a lot of brands building communities today, we see that as a huge positive, because you already have your early users who you can talk to and build products at least a certain subset will be using, right? You don't build out of your biases, right? Today, if I think something is important, no one's going to use it. Say if I'm the only user, no one else is going to be using it. It's a time that you're spending to build this that you're losing later on. For us, it's the other way around. We build out the community. Community asks, okay, hey, these are common questions that came up, right? Common questions are like, hey, where do I go? What are some resources I can see? That's why Learn PM came. Then from Learn PM, they weren't able to transition. That's why Insurjo came. And a lot of things that we're working today is somewhere in the retro tied up to these. So earlier this year, like we told you, the transition, and over 2020, I think we scaled up the online bits, primarily through Twitter and LinkedIn being our channels to reach out to the audience, and Slack and LinkedIn being the platforms that we have them on, where they can network across different cities, primarily India. We're trying to scale globally, but primarily India. We launched our Southeast Asia chapter late last year. That is kicking off. We had a couple of people joining in from the Valley when we hosted Lenny, Shreyas, etc. That has been the journey in 2020. Late 2020, we also forayed into the conferences. We launched our annual conference, the Product Summit. That had over 5,500 registrations, so that was pretty huge for us. In December, we did a niche summit in the in the D2C space called Brands Decoded, and that's why we realized we want to do something more experiential. People were doing a lot of virtual events, but we wanted to do that with a twist, and that's where the experience gets, and that response was good. So I think in 2021, the events bit is something that we're going to try to do a lot more focused. We're bringing in workshops with mixed panel. We've done that in October. We're doing one with Balsamic IQ end of this month, so something more hands-on. And 2021 a lot more outcome driven. I think you'll see something probably end of this session will be soft launching something that we've launched for communities to support other communities. It's not out there, but for everyone joining, we'll share the link with you guys. If you could share some feedback, and if you're building a community, this is something for you all, because we want to support every other community and anything that we've learned along the way. Today, we're lucky to have support of people building communities globally. These are community managers from companies like Google to people running stuff in the event space like Web Summit is one of the largest events globally, startup events globally. Their community directors. So I think that we'll come to, like Nanda will also share the challenges that we faced early on, which many of us will be facing. How we as a community can help each other. That's something that we'd like to give. Sorry that went on a monologue, but I hope this gives you a little insight into our journey and common problem. I'm sure we all face the similar stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Nanda, you want to add something more?
I think, yeah, just to add on to that, the initial days, the support that we received, especially, when we started from the scratch, right? You're always hesitant or skeptical on whether this would pan out to, become successful or not, because you don't have a definition of what is success when you're starting up, right? So, like Suhas pointed, few communities like EdStart, NASCOM, and we've received a lot of learnings on how, by attending this session and also meeting the people who are there from within these communities for a long time. So that has helped us immensely. And at the same time, few others. So we've been meeting, like it's because of me and Suhas. It's not just we met for the first time and then we started this, right? So we met at a different instances with other communities, like community folks where Paras is leading it, and that's how to some extent we came to an understanding of there is a need for this, such communities, and we started growing it together. And similarly, like how we met Ayush, and we started this together, right? So there's a lot of handwork that went on in the early stage. So like Suhas said, I think probably eventually we have some questions around it, and I can already see some questions on pointed towards how to grow from 0 to 1. So maybe we can take it up once we get to there, but for now I'll just hold.
Sure, then. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So quickly, I mean, the kind of aspects, was being shared by, Suhas and Nanda right now, I think would be something like a foundation or, an overview completely, which comes up. With my journey as, community manager, building communities on tech front for a long time. Right, I still remember, I think when Docker, started up, getting up those, traction. And then the first meetup when I did that one was we had only about 5 members. So uh, only 5 members out here in Bangalore. I'm talking this years long back. And then we had all these swags, from Docker, and we are like, okay, pizzas are here, Coke is here. 5 members, okay, let's start still. But we didn't give up. Now today, if I go, my previous organization, apart from AirMeet, I was at Gojek. So building up talents, building up various technology related communities, on that part. So what we saw, the last Docker meetup I was part of had, about 110 members attending. So that phenomenal growth, and then consistency of having 80 plus members on every meetup. I mean, that is phenomenal growth. I've been seeing associated with Docker and Ruby on Rails and GopherCon, and been operational for RubyConf India and then GopherCon India. And we that journey of getting Golang or GopherCon from Denver. Denver was the first in US. The first conference happened. And then, next year, we bought it 2015, we bought it out here, if I'm not wrong. And then the growth of Golang, the way it has been, the community has been built over it. That growth is phenomenal. But initial days, I'll tell you, before doing that one, my first community job was at the clinic that was in Mysore. Okay, so that was in Mysore, a two-tier city. Even though the company was based out of Denver, but here, was where the actual workshop was. When I say workshop, the hardcore, techie guys sitting out here in Mysore and doing it. And for me to, the entire company was stacked up services or building up application on Ruby on Rails. And trust me, only two members in Mysore only knew what is Ruby on Rails. And I was building up the meetup group. So I still understand. In first meetup, I organized it. I was the attendee and one speaker. So we didn't give up. So what we did a recording and we started posting it out. So we started building this, what was there. Eventually it turned out and we clubbed up, and then, Docker got to know us, and then we did, a Docker hackathon, which is a global level one, which connects with, throughout the chapters completely. So that journey itself is amazing. And the way now I see Ruby on Rails, even though, Golang or Docker or Kubernetes, when Kubernetes have, 80 plus 85 members, attending every single time. So that's amazing stuff. So as maybe, this leads me to this question again.
Yeah.
Initial days, you had only few members, who were listening to you. And how did you even get these, stakeholders in place? How did you even identify those stakeholders or influencers? How did that part actually happen? Or what more, what decisions actually helped you out?
So for the product folks, we already had some learning for growth folks, and that's where I said, like the first tweet that we put out, even though we had 50 members in the call, we already had some learning. So it wasn't like a very fresh start for us, honestly. So I completely understand your case of five. So I was actually going to ask you when you mentioned five and then consistently 80 plus and 100. What are those three things that you did, right? I could share from growth, because for us from day one it was like, dude, we will not have less than 200 registration. Even if it doesn't come inbound, we'll do different things. I think we've even like messaged people on LinkedIn. Like we've actually sat and messaged like 100, 150, 200 people on LinkedIn for the first few events, right? We did a lot of things which were very manual, but I think from day one it was for us that there is an audience. If we don't have the money to run ads, we don't have things to reach out, right? Inbound is not going to happen from day one, right? We don't have a social presence. We didn't have at least back then, and nor do we have that much today. It's just grown over time. But day one we didn't have any. So what we had to do is reach out, and we knew there has to be a hook for people to get interested, right? For us early on, okay, there weren't so many people doing product. I think a couple of boot camps were doing offline marketing events. There were some companies who were hosting these in their offices, which were more internal. So we did know that, okay, there is an interest. People want to transition to product, and this I'll share more about the product folks. Nanda can cover a little earlier from growth folks journey. We knew there's a definite interest in the market for this. We knew there's a definite gap there isn't anyone solving for. But it's only the challenge that we had. How do we put out, right? We are new. We aren't like, see, for Golang, etc. You're building on a brand community. Google Developer Circle, Facebook, they're building on a brand. When we are doing our first few events, we don't have a brand. No one knows the product folks, right? So day one, when you're reaching out, all you need to do, for us at least, luckily, we were able to reach out to senior product manager initially and tell them that, hey, we'll assure you that you'll have. So it's a selling that you're doing to both sides, right? To them, you're saying that, hey, we'd love to learn from your journey. We assure you there'll be at least X number of people in the room who would be interested to listen to you, and that will make it worth your time. And on the other hand, based on the profile that you're able to reach out to, take that marketer out to here. Maybe you don't have an audience who's listening out to you. For us, LinkedIn worked because we are in the professional space. Put out, I think we were tagging a lot of people, the initial stuff which you do like while scaling, but also what we did was reach out. We downloaded lists, use a bunch of tools. I think we can share that once the recording is off or in the chat section. Bunch of tools that helped us. We did a lot of things that were not scalable initially. Nothing that was illegal or anything. We didn't like scrape data, but we did a lot of things that were probably something that you'd say, hey, this is beyond what we should do. Like you wouldn't like want to put so much effort, right? Initially, we saw a lot of other communities just putting out social posts. If 30 people came, we are fine, right? I think Nanda and me were very clear that is not. I mean, we were ready to put in a lot of time. So I think a lot of time we did spend initially, and that's what we tell to even volunteers who join us today, right? We had our all hands only one meeting we've done this year, early Jan, which we shared about how the 2020 growth and early days, right? So today, how it is, TK, we have 25K plus on the newsletter, we have 10K plus on Twitter, LinkedIn. So when you put out a social post, things are easier, right? You already have some distribution. But that's when you share with them that imagine if they put in, even half that effort of what we were putting in earlier. No force, but just to share with them that, hey, like, don't depend. Today you're doing it. Whatever you're doing today is the hard work that's been put over the next 2 years. So if you're depending on that, then the coming 2 years are going to be hard. Instead, put in the effort today. The next 2 years will become a lot easier, right? Imagine on the existing distribution, if you guys could still go on scale. No, use this. Obviously, we worked hard to get to here. No discounting that. Use this distribution, but if you could add on to that and think of other innovative ways. In 2 years, lots has changed, right? Today, people are so well connected. Everyone's hyper connected across the internet, right? There's so many different things you can do. So yeah, we keep brainstorming. Hopefully, some ideas click, and yep, that is something. So I agree with you. I think initial days are super non-scalable. For us as a professional community, LinkedIn helped a lot earlier, and we focused on Twitter as a channel because LinkedIn over time the content became super spammy. So LinkedIn is great for outbound. We kept Twitter for inbound because it's easy to sift through the noise. It's harder to build initially, right? Initial growth we depended on LinkedIn, which was outbound, but at the same time we focused on Twitter. Right? It takes time to build. We focused on Twitter. Over time, that is our primary channel today. A lot of inbound comes through that. A lot of senior folks already live there. Very easy to cut through the noise when compared to LinkedIn. That's how we look at inbound and outbound. These are two platforms that have worked for us. Lots of new platforms coming out, but I still feel for professional communities, these two are is my recommendation for top two.
Completely, completely. I mean, to add to that one, if you ask me, what we did, literally out there that recorded. I thought, we'll record every session, and gradually, what I did was, I started tapping out to institutions. So basically, the engineering tech, well known. I mean, Mysore is the place for engineers out there, and obviously the cream always wants to be in Bangalore, right? So we're tapping them out, and then we started building up workshops to them out there. So in clubbing up the meetups with the institutions and giving that certification programs, giving those workshops, and then in no time, of course, there were students, but we had an interest of, we had about 50 people joining in, enrolling for the workshop, but in that, at least 5 of them were regularly attending the meetup. So those were the things, was been done. And then we didn't stop, putting up on YouTube. For us, I think YouTube was the first thing which actually created a lot of traction because we were sharing knowledge without asking for anything. We are not asking you to enroll anything, no, nothing. We're just getting people who are actually experimenting Ruby on Rails, how the framework works, how quickly you can, get down on the production, deployed, and what is DevOps in the first place, how you can actually integrate. And that is when the Docker came into picture. So, so these things, and then again we clubbed it up with the institutions. Again, I think institutions have played a very big role in initial days for me because when there is it's a completely new thing, so we need to educate a certain sector until they build up the confidence. Obviously, people who know already about Ruby, they are not out there. They're already doing very good out there, elsewhere. So then the third part, I would say, we started bringing in speakers who were visiting from abroad to one of the conferences, like Garden Ruby City used to happen. So we used to be there, and then we used to sponsor them, promote the community and be there. I used to put up stalls out there with all the goodies out there. And what I used to do is connect with those speakers and get them at least for one day to come and talk. So whichever day they are available out there. So there are two things. Okay, so how it worked out? Since we are talking informally, so Mysore is an heritage place, so it's a tourism spot. So I used to plan them, a tour, Mysore. So in between, I'll have 30 half a day will be spent on the meetup. So I used to make them talk out there. So
Nice.
this actually worked out phenomenally. But yeah, I mean these were the initial days, individual. So that is one part of it.
Did you have some funding? Did you have any full time people working on that initiative? Did you have funding from the companies or any
Yes,
sponsor? Okay.
yes. We see this was my volunteer job completely, but I can also put it up as growth because for me, talent was important. because we had the demand, so we need to supply it. So I need to figure out how to get people who actually who can expertise on going forward. I'm not looking at experts, but we are ready to train them, and we can have twin programs. We have a number of people from Pivotal coming in, visiting office. Again, as I said, Mysore being an heritage place, people used to never say no to actually come and visit. So that was, taken as an advantage, and then, putting that session. So I had speakers, who actually came for 2 days and stayed there for 1 month, and then roaming around places out there and staying out there. They have yoga, they have a lot of things out there, where they can train themselves, and they are happy to dedicate 3 to 4 hours with the members to actually, guide them, how to do it.
That's
Of course, yeah, Clinics was there. Clinics was my, the company which I was, being part of. So we had enough space, so we had no issues out there. So we were able to do this one. So again, this thought process of a product, it was not a product company. It was a
yeah,
services-oriented company.
yeah.
So where they were handling Comcast, Dish, and AMG Bank, all those big players out there. And but having that thought process of why community is important, I think this is what I learned from them.
100%. The
Yeah.
costs were covered by the company that you were working at, or how did you cover the cost?
It was covered by the company, and the way we were actually influencing and bringing up this, co-hosting part or co-sponsorship, gradually companies started, sponsoring a little, gradually. So that is when, I was able to break even for these events. I think after after I think 1 year, if I'm not wrong.
Nice.
Until then, it was all pumping in as much as possible. But there was an objective for that one. It was a company objective as well, so which was part of it. So there's no hidden formula out there in that way. So
Agree,
yeah.
agree, 100% agree. Just trying to bring that out. So, if there are any other brand communities who've joined us, they'll understand the value of investing for that 1 year. You don't get returns on day one, day two, but on day 30, day 60, day 90, and it's compounding, right? Once you've built a
Exactly.
mode around people, actually enjoying or knowing about you or your company doing this effort, it takes time upfront, but that has its certain benefits in the long run. That is how I was trying to bring that point.
Completely. So, coming back here, I would like to, in between, we'll go to the questions as well, just to make it more interactive. But one question out here to Nanda. Nanda, straight away we'll jump to the last question, which I wanted to, because I'm very curious, what is the this year's plan for, or the action plans for growth folks and product folks as well?
Sure. So I think the so even for growth folks and product folks, if we look at it, there are different. It's a diverse group of people who have been a part of the community. Right from those who are aspiring to get into growth or product to those who are already in the growth or product, and how they can upskill themselves in the domain by meeting relevant people. So when it comes to growth folks, I think so we have a standalone, like I said, Makeathon, right? So that's one of the standalone activity that we had at growth folks. And in fact, 2020 we planned a couple of hackathons, and it actually got cancelled because of COVID. Because we planned somewhere in April, and right from March things started picking up, and we had to shut that down. And again we planned an online initiative, but because of other challenges we couldn't scale that up. But one of the things that we are focusing core is to so what happens in growth is, it's growth is, like I said, it's not defined. You don't know how you can consume growth, right? So that's why what we do is we bring in live challenges from the companies that are facing in the product growth space, and ensure that we invite the participants coming from product and growth and different verticals to come together and solve the problem. So ideally these hackathons happens when we do physically over a 24-hour stretch, where the participants come and solve live and present it for the solution, and where the way it's a value add for the companies, that companies actually get to see how 20 other teams are working on it, to see the strategies coming in out, and how different ways they can learn from it, right? So this is one activity. So basically, if you look at it, so it's actually a learning for the entire community to see how growth evolves and how it is a collaborative effect of multiple specializations. So we are looking at bringing in such activities, not limited to hackathon, but different ways in which people can come and collaborate and solve the problems. And at the same time, the another thought process on how we are going to look at it is like see how we can actually help more people to get into growth roles, increase the awareness about it. And the reason why I'm telling is that I'm part of my job role involves connecting and talking to a lot of recruiters and understanding how it is shaping up. So especially in the marketing and product space, growth is something that's picking up rapidly, and I feel that is also our focus. That will be a focus this year to advocate about how existing growth players are actually leading in the market, and how it is the right time for a lot of people to get into growth right now, right? So that's one. And I think probably there are also few the type of events and how we gonna give it, how are we gonna drive this will vary. But the focus, if I had to say, it is to bring a lot more people into the growth, and at the same time bring a lot more people in the ecosystem and to meet and greet and learn from each other. And I think
Perfect.
for in terms of product, there are also a bunch of initiatives that's lined up. I think probably Suhas has already shared a lot of it, but we've learned a lot along the way. And like Suhas said, both in product folks and growth folks, it's always been it's not an initiative that we feel that it is right and take it up, but rather it's more based on the feedbacks that we received from the events, right? And we curate that and we see what is the priority of if we take that up, would that add a value to a large set of our community members? And that's how we prioritize and take it live to the market. And even like Suhas said, early stages, it was a hands-on effort. It was an hands-off effort. It's not just inviting manually to send invites over LinkedIn or emails. We were also doing cold calls, because we used to invite magnificent speakers, right? And it was a physical session, unlike what we do right now over online. And we would have invested already a lot in terms of talking to the community managers at places like WeWork, CoWork, and different co-working spaces. So it was a necessity for us to have room at least half full fill, right? So and right now, from where we were to where we are right now, we feel happy and thanks for all the support that we've received along the way. And yeah, Suhas will share more on the other initiatives that is lined up for product folks.
Yeah, sure thing. Super excited about this bit because there's something that I keep shilling all the time. So one thing I think we have coming up for end of this month is definitely the Accelerate, which is our version of how do we support more communities, right? So we've all seen accelerators and incubators for startups. Our hypothesis is it's the right time today for something like this to exist for communities, and no one really is focusing on this. We'll soft launch it here, but please keep it to yourselves till we launch it online. But we'd love for you guys to check it out and do share your feedback. I think Nanda and me are always available. You can WhatsApp us, you can DM us on Twitter. So that is something that we have. We want to help other communities as well grow. Specific to TPF is our teardown series. I think that is shaping up super well. We have Oyo this month. I think that's something that we want to continue to grow. Like I shared earlier, I think 2020 was a lot of awareness. A lot of people wanted to break into product or were already in the product space and wanted to connect to more senior product folks. I think they at least got to know about TPF. So that is something that was a 0 to 1 for us as well. In 2021 is a lot more about outcomes. So we want to scale up our Insurjo program where we help people actually navigate through whether bootcamp's actually solving their need, or is there something that we as a community, people who are already in the space, help people who want to break into. We just play the bridge. So that is something that we want to focus on, and a couple of initiatives in that space that will be coming around March, April. We're working with a lot more brands. Like I mentioned about the workshops, I think we want to go a lot more hands-on. Now you see a lot more product companies doing webinars, which probably is great. I mean, there is a dearth of this. So even though on Twitter you'll see everyone saying like, okay, hey, there's just enough of this. There's a bubble outside Twitter, guys, and that's something we've learned. Agreed. Yes, maybe we have a lot more access, and maybe we want a lot more quality. No doubt about that. We're not compromising on that. but there is a huge market outside of that, and maybe collaborate with a couple of other product communities to bring something that can solve for a lot of audience on those who are looking to break in. For senior folks, we are trying to create a lot more curated membership driven initiatives, calling this the product club. So that's something that should come up in the next quarter. um, these are two initiatives that I think we are definitely focusing. A bunch of other ideas, a bunch of other mini events that are coming on. We're focusing on four product verticals, right? We focus on product management in the first 1.5 years of our existence. We see these as four legs that product really has: product analytics, product growth, product design, and tech for PM. So these are four verticals where we want to collaborate with the best in the industry. Um, and actually bring content that that might be applicable, so people can walk away with stuff they can actually apply. That is our intention. And one thing that we always believe is, how do we make knowledge accessible and knowledge free, right? Different ways to do this. So on a continuation of our membership thing, we also have this initiative that's coming up where across we have 15 topics that we've come up with from the community on what they want to learn. We structure that. We've done 130 plus events today, online plus offline. Some of that already exists, but maybe a learning roadmap which is live to learn and streamed across YouTube, but from the very best, directors from Razorpay, Gojek, etc. Come learn from the very best. See if product management is for you. Join our Slack channels to actually engage with a lot more members. Talk to PM, senior PM, see if product management is for you. Then definitely there are plenty of opportunities. If you are a self learner, lots of material already out there. Lots of tips on Twitter on how to break in. We have a series on YouTube which is breaking into PM. You can actually learn about how people have broken into Flipkart, etc. But these are a couple of initiatives that we are excited about right now in TPF.
Sure then. Thank you so much for this. So quickly, what we'll do is, Pramod is saying he wants to drop off. Pramod, you want to come on stage for a minute? If you're still there. I don't think so. I think he's dropped off. Okay. So what we'll do is, I think members who have asked questions, you can click on raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. Come on stage, and so that you can have an interactive session itself. Directly you can ask them the same question. Alan?
Yes. Yeah, waiting for
Okay.
people to click the raise hand button.
Yes,
It's okay.
yes.
So let's go with the top voted question first.
Top voted questions. Okay.
It is Pramod again, but yeah, let's take the question.
Okay.
Santosh, will you please
Sure
take it?
then. Top three things to move a community from 0 to 1. I think we have covered up as much as possible, but again, maybe if you want to put up, three things, do you want to sum it up again, Nanda and Suhas?
Sure thing. Nanda, do you want to take it first? I'll be happy to summarize that.
Sure, sure. So I think first and foremost is, when we get started, it is to uh, understand the core objective of, the audience that you're targeting, right? Or when you're building a community, you need to be, like, at the initial stages, you may not have a clear definition of, or a persona of who you're going to reach out to, who you have to be, who have to be in the part of the community. But essentially, at least as you grow, it's necessary that you understand who are you catering to, what are their pain points, and how you're going to be there in their journey of whatever they claim to be successful, right? So the clarity of thought on what is the pain point that you're addressing is critical. So at initial stages, when it comes to community, you can say that, or you get lost in driving a lot of initiatives or driving a lot of things, and that's fine at the initial stages. But it's also necessity that you be clear in terms of how you're helping the audience in what way, and how you're going to be there with their journey, so that audience or the community members be with you, and they know that this is how they can grow along with you. So so that's the first thing. That, and secondly, it's about consistency. And it is, so when it comes to community, especially because most of it is like volunteer driven, and it is, we all have full-time jobs, and we lose the motivation eventually down the line. So it's important that when you start a community, you have that motivation aligned, and align that motivation to your goals, aspirations also in terms of how you're going to grow in your career, so that you are motivated the next day. You're going to get up and you're going to ask yourself, hey, is this something that's important to you? You don't have to ask that question to yourself, because you know that it is also a goal that you already have, right? And you would not run out of exhaustion when you're working and driving such initiatives. So having those goals aligned to your vision and your goals is a very important factor, and that will eventually help you to be consistent in any other forms of events or initiatives that you're going to bring into picture, right? And probably, if I have to say the last thing, it's about again uh, giving. So you would hear a lot of feedback, eventually down the line when you're conducting events or any form of events. It's very important that you hear these feedbacks. Like Suhas said at the start of session, right? Like we used to get questions on, can you also do an event on this, right? And is there something? Can you bring in an expert from this specific vertical? So we were attentive for such questions, and in fact, we had a clear roadmap in the beginning on, within product, which all areas we need to touch upon and what are the kind of experts that we need to bring on, right? So we were attentive, we were, open to hear those feedbacks and then curate the initiative on top of that. So I think that's also another important element. Uh, Probably there are lots more to add, but I'll let probably Suhas to summarize and add a few more things on top.
Sure thing, guys. I've also shared a deck. Do check that out. But one easy answer to this is not easy answer, but one thing that worked for us, and that's something that I share with everyone, is scaling 0 to 1. Always get someone like Nanda to help you out. That has been our hack on growth folks and the product folks. You definitely need a lot of hustlers upfront. Couple of points just to add to what Nanda said is definitely deleverage, right? Do some things that don't scale. That is something that has to be internalized. Uh, don't think. Definitely like plan big, right? But focus on being super small, solving for a small set. Really solving for these initial, people that you handpick or curate, make sure that you know your first 100, 200 members of your community by name, get to know exactly what they want from the community. This will help you shape up the rest of the community. Last point there is it's a lot of engineering. We're both from a tech background. We are not from a community management background, but you can engineering communities a lot, right? It is all about understanding it doesn't have to be even like a tech space, right? People have built such beautiful communities in the food space, in hobby communities. We are talking today about professional communities, but just go check communities that have existed for so long. And we all diss on Facebook in public, but to be honest, they have the best communities, the most thriving communities running. Even for us, okay, as many tools that are there in the market today, right, from IT Network to Circle to Tribe, right? The most engaged community is still on WhatsApp, right? So it's not so much about the form, it's not so much about the tool, it's all about how you are engineering your community. It takes time, right? It's all a function about time initially, and then start engineering. There are definitely a lot of tools that can help you scale, but make sure that you figure out that initial bit really well. Happy to help you guys with tools or stacks. There are tons of automation powerhouses that we have today, right from Zapier to a bunch of these tools that you can use, and with very small number of people. But think of that at stage 2. But stage 1 is definitely do everything on your own, figure out what works for you. One thing that has helped us in the engagement of our community is something that we've built internally. It's called GrabChat.online. You guys could check it out. Happy to share like a form of it that works as an engagement layer for your community. Lots of other communities using it. Lots of them have built their own versions of it. So do check it out. These are just some pointers off the top of my head. It's actually the last slide of the same deck that I shared earlier. Easy for me to, off the top of my mind, I'm sure I don't remember all of this, but these are some things that we share with a lot of people approaching us. So hope that helps.
Sure, then. Thank you so much. So we have Tejas here on stage. Hi, Tejas.
Hi.
What's up? What's up?
Hey, hi. So my question, I've put it up on the question bar, but so what makes more sense with respect to say engagement or even acceptance? Would it be like a volunteer-driven community, or would it be like a organization-driven community? Like say, someone would be apprehensive about joining a community which is pushed forward by like a big organization or a small organization where they have like a hidden agenda. Maybe that's what people think, right? So but when you see volunteer driven people are more okay with just jumping on it and starting engaging with it. So what do you think in your experience has been like a better approach?
Got it.
Yes.
I'll probably give my view and then Nanda can share from both angles. Something that I share with all is it's not easy to build your own community, right? If you don't find your niche, definitely we encourage everyone to build community. But honestly, if you don't have a brand behind it, it's not easy. Consistency over time, it's very easy to start community, very difficult to actually run them and take them to a stage where you are also happy and it's valuable for your entire community. So I'd always suggest if there's something already in that space, join that community, especially if it's a brand, right? Scaling up 0 to 1 is super easy compared to something that is unbranded. Join them, help them. If even after 6 months you see, okay, hey, like I've learned, because you'll definitely have a learning, right, initially. And it's very easy to root on. They have the resources, they have the manpower, they have dollars, and you can always engage volunteers with a brand, right? For example, Google Developer Circle, they provide their resources, volunteers come run it, and that's how you can scale it. That is definitely number one. In case you don't find something in your niche, then start your own, but be there for that much longer, right? Something that you could have done in 6 months with a brand community will take you a year and a half with something that is starting off on your own, unless you already have some amount of audience or distribution. That's my take, but yeah, Nanda, Santosh, in case you guys.
So I think from my side, it's about both are hard, and when it comes to brand, it's a bit easier if it is an established brand because there's already some following and there's already some brand recall that's involved and credibility is already built, right? So it becomes a bit easier for volunteers to associate with it. But yes, like Suhas pointed, it's not easy, especially if you're starting from the scratch, and it does take a lot of effort at the initial stages to align the volunteers goals, career goals, to why is it that they want to do this, because a lot of them will come and say that I want to volunteer, but uh, do you see how that aligns back to their career, and how is it that they see that they have a trajectory of growth within the community also as they volunteer, and understand until there is this alignment, it's very challenging for them to stick and be consistent on a long time.
Perfectly. I think with my experience, I think as Suhas mentioned, he asked me through when I'm talking as well. Without brand backing up, it was a year-long effort. So until even for them to recognize that okay, this part of the world, I mean, it's not too far away from Bangalore. Still, to actually see that kind of attraction, and then then Docker started sending up merchandise to do Docker Hacker Day. So so it takes, but the moment that happened, and we were already known. So the next meetup we had 25 members additional. So rather than what we had, so that makes a lot of difference. I think I'm going to add to that part. But again, when it comes to a volunteer driven, that should be a passion, man. That's what I say. It should be completely passion for that person, because he or she shouldn't be thinking about that that person is going to achieve some a millionaire or billionaire coming and volunteering out here, but that should be completely out of passion to learn something, to share something. I think that is where I see as a main difference. And what you
100%.
said, Tejas, is completely true. Yes, there would be definitely hidden agendas with some brand coming into picture when they're actually promoting their own product or technology. Sure then. So let's quickly go to the next one. We have Aman saying that, from the experience of onboarding so many volunteers, what was the most prominent thing volunteers were looking for before joining, and a common why? So
Good
what
question.
was the answer?
Good question, and I'm trying to figure out the right answer for this because we don't have one answer to this. Everyone is in here for a lot of different things. And Aman, do you have an example of something that you're running that we could probably give you an example that I can share for TPF? I mean, we have these conversations at least now. Initially, it was okay, you're coming on board, thanks, please come help us, right? Now it is okay, we have some more bandwidth. Okay, now is where we ask a lot more why is how can we help you, right? You are coming and putting in your time, right? You're helping a lot more people. So how is it that we as a community can help you? And we are in a position today which we were not maybe a year and a half ago. So a lot of reasons today are definitely around the cause, right? We're all working towards the cause. That is something that people align with, and that is critical. That is something that's non-negotiable. And then the other factors come in. For us, people who are joining in early stage, they probably are trying to break into product themselves. So we'd say no one better than us, but we're obviously biased. We've helped a bunch of our volunteers transition. We should probably put out those stories. So that is one of the major reasons, but it takes time, right? So it depends on where you want to go as well. So today, one when they tell this to us also, well, the next follow up question is okay. If you want to break into product, definitely this is a great part. But also let us know which company are you trying to break into product with, because there are still some companies where volunteering with us might not really give you that leverage. Uh, you might as well go do an MBA, right? Today, even breaking into product, 80% of these roles are still very, very internal, very, laterally you can move into those roles or directly through MBA hiring, right? So is it that opportunity that you're looking for? Maybe we are still not in that position, but we'd love to help you still, right? But we'd suggest, okay, this is an alternate path. At the same time, maybe we could pick up something very passive. So we have two kinds of volunteer, where people who come in very actively, they grow through the community a lot faster. They're involved in the core processes. A lot more who don't have that much time, who want to take it slowly, they join a lot more of these passive projects. Small pods doing different stuff, where they don't need to move as fast as the others, and they've been there. So we have both these opportunities. So why it differs from person to person, but I think for early stage folks, I'm assuming I saw your profile was a little more early stage. This is one common thing that we've seen, and that's why we think we can also. A lot of them are also there just because it's fun. I think our team, most of the people that we have met through is online. We've never met in person, and it's a young team. So I think we both are probably the oldest members there. A couple of senior PMs as well, but a very very young team. So that should be fun.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank
when they say old, that doesn't mean age. Okay, it's an young team. Okay, Aman, you can go
yeah,
ahead. You can ask another
yeah.
question as well.
Thanks for that, Suhas. Thanks for the answer. Just a request from my side. Why don't you put out the stories of why did the volunteers join and their success stories so that it inspires many other volunteers to join different communities? Because sincerely, like before joining, I was looking out for stories of volunteers, but didn't find one. But instead, went on to look out for other resources.
Great idea, great idea. Thanks for that actually. So maybe on the Accelerate page that is specifically for communities, we'll definitely add 3 stories. Nanda and me have taken note of that. Thanks for that idea. We should definitely.
Sure, Aman. Aman, I think you had one more question, right? You want to ask that one? I think it's not available. Okay, quickly. Okay. Meanwhile, I have one more question out here. We were discussing this. Simarjit, hi, welcome on stage. I'll quickly, infuse one question out here with the conversation what we are having related to that one. How do we measure community? How do we
Sure.
do this? Like, is that, okay, you say, you have 10,000 plus members, or only membership, actually, counts it completely, or the kind of activities what you do is your will be, or the individual member with that membership, what is that person contributing to this community? Will that matter? So how do you actually measure this, the term of
100%.
community?
100%. 100%. Nanda, do you want to start that? Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, yeah. I'll share a bit about it. So when it comes to measurements, again, if you take metrics into consideration, these vanity metrics doesn't really impact a lot, because when we start running behind these vanity metrics, it just like pushes in a different direction, and a lot of our energy will actually be distorted, right? So when we started, like our focus was to see, okay, you know what, we started conducting these events and we started in having those networking sessions. How many from those events and from those networking sessions are recurring, right? And that kind of gave us a validation to see, okay, the kind of audience that we have, they are not just here for the first time, and they are there with us in a journey. So if I have to put it crisp shortly, it is qualitative, right? At initial stages, it's important that we focus on the qualitative measurements, and even if it is not in double digits or triple digits, it's important that we keep an eye on how are you creating that environment where you involve the other audience also to be a part of your conversations, to have them be a part of it. Because at initial stages, it's not just events. The other aspects that we used to also focus on, even before the network, before the session starts, and even after the session starts, we were very particular about how we should enable the audience to interact among each other. And when we see that, okay, this is a bunch of people who are there to with some objective, and they're not able to connect with each other, right? That's where, like, me or Suhas will come and start give. One of us would point, what, can you go kickstart those conversations with them? We start that, and we give an activity, and we come and we see the collaborative efforts going in among the audience as well, right? And that's important, because once you are out, once your event is done, they're not just interacting with you and your brand, they're also interacting with the others within the community. And today, I and Suhas have met each other. We know each other. We scale this because we met each other. We interacted, in some event, right? And that's where the whole journey of, once they start collaborating among each other, then the recognition of, okay, what, we met at this specific event. That comes in, right? And a lot of ideas comes along the way, and a lot of thought process comes in. And then as you grow, eventually, probably that's when your metrics comes into picture. That's when you start looking at, okay, how do I grow this specific initiative from X to Y, or how do I grow the member base for a specific initiative from X to Y, and what is the when we, now that we have in thousands, or 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 numbers that we have on top of the mind, then we look at, okay, how do we reactivate it, right? So as you grow, you start looking at those metrics eventually, but initially it's more qualitative.
100% agree. I think Nanda has probably covered it all. Just adding to that is everything on the website is to help you. See, today, if I give you an example, if there's another community with who's just starting off, right? You or me are obviously going to trust someone who's already been there doing that for a longer time. So those are metrics, those are important as well, right? Keep that going. But for a community, what's more important, what Nanda shared, how many of these conversations are, so there is a tool that is coming up, it's called Comsur, do check it out. We can't afford it right now, but that is where that helps you in your community. So if you're a brand community, do check it out. That's a great tool. They're building right now, you can help them build. Qualitatively, initially, how many conversations can you facilitate? How many of those are, initially, yes, okay, you don't have any number, but you can definitely talk to 100, 200 members, figure out what they want, make those matches themselves, right? Make those matches yourself, see if it's actually helping. For us, it could be outcome, right? What we are tracking right now is, are we able to help X number of people transition the product early stage? For mid stage, are we able to help them to connect to mentors who are, senior? For senior product folk, can you create a small community? So different metrics for different stages of the community, as well as different stages of the members in the community. So happy to help. If you have an example, do reach out to us. I have a hard stop in 5 minutes. I'm sorry, but happy to help you on the side.
Sure. Thank you so much for that one. I think we did overshoot time as well. So we have Surumjit. Okay. I'm not able to read that. Why is that? It's overlaying. Okay. 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 Please go ahead. Ask your question and please clarify.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your answers, guys. I think that makes a lot of sense. So we are basically a SaaS product. So right, so which is basically a developer tool, right? So before actually, so when I think about it, right, it's when your DAU will increase, your community should increase, right? Like should community be your first step to for your users to actually enter the product? That sounds like very counterintuitive, right? So I feel like for these sort of products, it's important to actually first maybe grow your user base and then maybe try and convert them to join their community and then take it from there, right?
Absolutely.
So basically, just to add this one, I think this one is something similar to the question which I wanted to ask, but we'll take this as the last question of the session. Like, why should an individual, join or adapt a community practice to grow? I think there's something on the similar line. So,
100%.
go ahead.
100%. I'll probably just kickstart things. My views and Nanda would go in depth on this. Is especially for your case, you could look at it as two ways, right? Engage a broader community of those who are interested in your product. If you can tell me a little more about the SaaS product that you're building.
So it's basically a developer tool to help like non-technical or front-end people to build their back-end services without actually writing code.
Awesome, awesome. So you have a lot of DevRel communities already doing this. So you have examples that you can actually playbooks out there that you can actually follow from the biggest communities, right? Microsoft itself is building a lot of DevRel community.
Yeah.
I think Ronak is here from Red Carpet. I assume they might also be looking at something on those lines. But just these are two things that I'd like you to go a little more depth on. Build a broad-based community of those who are interested in your space. This can be potential customers later on, but do it only from a give-first approach, right? You know the space better. You're building in that space. You know the space. Can you really think on lines of the biggest, right? Stack Overflow, for example, right? It's a community where I can go to and find answers. Can you do something as a longer term vision, right? Potentially some of them might become customers, but think of it from a give first approach. That could be one side of it. Second is your existing customers, right? This could be even like very simple stuff as say your 15 customers, just put them together, or you can just have it as a one-to-one. Even if you don't want to create these guys can be on the same platform. If those guys have queries, these guys could answer. You could gamify it for them, right? Can
Mhm.
you make these guys evangelists? Can you make these guys supporters of the product and eventually turn them into referrals, right?
Mhm.
There are tons of ways you can think of it, but think of these as two separate verticals where one you're solving for the broader audience and one for a small. So it's a incentivize a smaller, your very engaged users. It could be your existing customers or those who are in potential talks with. Incentivize them, even if it means non-monetary, but as a part of your product you could give like a 3 month special thing to them,
Mhm.
extended. Be open to that, because these
Mhm.
guys are the ones who will champion your product out there, right? Why is G2 and other referral platforms so important for B2B and those who are building products there? It is all on how important referrals are. That's how I'd like to separate it. Maybe we could go in depth and help you out, chalk a plan for you. But maybe Nanda, if you would like to add in, Nanda is probably a better person to answer this, and I'd like.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily a better person, but I'm just curious. You said SaaS platform, right? So, curious to know, is it like a platform for early stage developers or someone who's, with an experience, or they're in the probably with say 5 to 10 years of experience? Who's your target audience for this product?
So like an ideal customer would be who actually doesn't know how to code, or people like who are front end developers and necessarily not into back end development, right? Or like small businesses who wanted to start up really quick and accelerate their development. Like those would be our ideal customers. And maybe like for enterprise, there could be internal tools that teams want to build really quick, and some teams like that want to empower basically their non technical people to actually build out product by themselves, right? So those would be like our ideal customers for now.
Sure, sure. I think your question also was that should you go community first approach, right? Like, is that
Right.
right? So I think so when it like Suhas pointed, it's important that you find out those early champions, right? And say even within growth folks or product folks, if we just launch some initiative today and tell them that invite all the members, hey, you know what, we've launched this, can you try this? I mean, there will be few folks who trust us. Like out of the 20,000, we've built that credibility trust among some who would like to spare some time and take a note. Otherwise it's very hard for others to involve and make them to be part of the journey, right? So
Mhm.
it's important that you advocate about this and help them be a part of it right from the beginning, where you and both of you are clear on how you're solving their needs. And
Mhm.
because you mentioned a specific pain point, right? Identify who are those people who would definitely need such use cases. Probably they are working as a developer in specific companies at a mid-market level companies, where they have limited resources because their team is not able to support with that, right? So identify such user base and probably reach out to them and involve them and let them know, this is something that I'm building, it might help you. Why don't you check it out, right? And you don't need to pay anything for this, why don't you check this out? And then bring them together, right? Bring them together and start have them share more feedbacks to you. And that will in fact help you to, once you make those changes as per the recommendation, as per the feedbacks that they've given, because they're the ones who are working on it hands on, you can see an exponential growth, because the feedbacks are going live and they'll feel more happy, gratitude, because you're taking those feedbacks and implementing it. So it's important that you bring those champions in and make them evangelist.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Sure, sure then. Thank you so much, Jyot, for being on stage and, being part of and, being participating as well. Thank you all the participants. I think we are running out of time right now. I mean, we can keep on talking about community building. I think there's no way we can go on. I think we can still have 24-hour marathon sessions as well.
For sure. For sure.
We can do
We'll
that.
probably do a version 2. And
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely we'll do that one. So thank you so much, Suhas, for being here, and Nanda for sharing this, amazing knowledge and experience as well. And then, guys, kindly connect with them, and then be in touch with them. You know where to reach them. I don't have to tell. And then also, Suhas has shared, one of the deck as well, which will be really helpful for you. Kindly do that one, and maybe this first version of the video might come up in TPF channel pretty soon. So, and then let's see, we can do a follow up of this one and take it to the next level. Sure. Then.
Thanks so much, Santosh. I think this was amazing for us. Thanks, Alan, for giving us this opportunity, and hope it was useful. I think it was more about our experience, but I think if you guys have anything in specific that we could help with, as Santosh mentioned, always available. Please do reach out to us.
Thanks. Yeah, even thanks, Santosh and Alan, for facilitating this. I think I and Suha speak on a day-to-day basis for a lot of things, but this is something, you get to hear a perspective in a little bit different context. So it's always nice to have such conversations and help each other and facilitate. So thanks a lot for hosting this.
Sure. I mean, there is so much to talk. I don't want to leave, but of course we'll have the next version. I am still I'm yet to ask about day-to-day management of community management. There's so many things. I mean, I think we can have a series.
Yeah, let's do that. I think none of the questions that we discussed we could cover. So hopefully a series will help you. We definitely. Thanks so
Definitely.
much, guys. Great
Thank you
platform.
so much.
Thanks to everyone for joining. I hope it was useful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
Good evening.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Keep safe.